Mickey McDonald and Kristen Weller teach ninth grade biology and geometry at PK Young Developmental Research School and have been researching their practice for years through the process of inquiry. As one of the most challenging aspects of engaging in inquiry is data analysis, I asked these veteran teacher researchers to talk about the data analysis process for their most recent cycle of inquiry. In that most recent work, Mickey and Kristen were studying the roles standard-based grading and differentiation could play in their D-tracked high school biology and geometry classes.
Over the past 5 to 6 years, I've been doing inquiry related to student achievement in my classroom for my biology kids. This came out of the changes in accountability for teachers and students with the beginning of the end of course exam for biology. So I looked at assessment for learning, and I've looked at blended learning and how to include both face-to-face and online learning within the classroom to help students achieve. And then 3 of my colleagues and I went ahead and detracked. So we eliminated tracking within high school biology and geometry and English language arts in the 9th grade. So all students would take honors, biology, geometry, and English language arts. And this kind of led me to my wondering for this cycle, which was in what ways does differentiation and standards-based assessment play out for both struggling learners and advanced learners in a D-tracked honors biology classroom. For this particular inquiry, I collected data in multiple ways. One way is I, of course, collected student work or student artifacts. I also interviewed students. I did individual interviews, and then I had them fill out a Google form at the end of this inquiry cycle. And then I also kept a teacher reflection journal in which I answered 3 prompts every day after class.
As Mickey was collecting data in her biology class, Kristen Weller was collecting similar types of data in her geometry classroom. When they began analyzing these data, each initially struggled with how to best organize and approach their data.
Okay, so when I had all of this data, which there was a lot of data because this inquiry ran over a 4-week period, I had a 3-ring binder full of pages and pages of reflection journals and student work and interviews. And initially I just read through the data and thought, okay, I can start here, write down some things that I'm seeing. I did that initially and realized by the end of doing that that wasn't going to work for me. So what I did is I took all that data and I decided that I should make data posters for each student within the study. I had 10 students within this study that I was following. So anytime that I had a piece of or a comment related to that student in my reflection journal, I would pull that out for that student. I also included all of their achievement data. I included all of their interview data, and I made data posters for each student. So that's kind of where I started with it. Once I had the 10 data posters made for each of my students, I decided the next step really should be to read through the data for the students, and then I created 2 other posters on what I was seeing in the data at this point. I used these posters with Kristen Weller, who was doing a parallel inquiry in her geometry classroom with the same question. And I asked her to look at what I had come up with thus far and to give me ideas if my thinking made sense, and also to see where we had similarities and where we had differences. So that's where I went next. One of the things in science is this claim, evidence, and reasoning framework. So I'm kind of trying to use that in the way that I structure the learning that I had. So I come up with a claim, and then some of the evidences that I have to support the claim. Okay. And then the reasoning will come later, I think, as I write.
Okay.
So what I noticed was with the pre-assessment, my whole, I kind of based this whole study on this idea that I would give a pre-assessment and I would be able to group my kids as either needing support or being advanced learners that could go on their own and deepen their knowledge.
That's similar to what I did too.
Unfortunately, the data didn't pan out like I thought it would. So the kids took the pre-assessment and nobody did well on it. So it wasn't a way to kind of differentiate students into groups or place them into groups. So, so my claim, pre-assessment is only effective if students have background knowledge to establish groups for tiered instruction and differentiation.
And you can back this up with, and I think you have that here, but your advanced student only got a 50. We have a 0 here, we have a 45 here, so you definitely have numerical data to go with that.
Can I write that down so I'll remember that? But then the other thing is, when I designed the pre-assessment, I designed it based on the end in mind. So what did they need to know in order to be successful? Not what they needed to know to be successful in a unit, but what did they need to master by the end of the unit?
Okay.
So I don't know, maybe that affected it. But I'm not sure how to design a pre-assessment to measure what they needed to know to be successful in a unit that's completely new too. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do, because when I did my pre-assessment for the unit that I was doing, I already knew they had some of the skills. I just wanted to know to what extent they had them. So I had students who knew what I was talking about in that first couple of lessons, and that came out and I was able to differentiate right away, whereas I can see how this would be a problem if they had no idea what it was to begin with.
Right, even like you were pointing out the vocabulary there.
As veteran teacher researchers, both Mickey and Kristen understand the complexity of the data analysis process and the value of collaboration with colleagues.
When I describe data analysis, I'm going to kind of describe it linearly, but really it doesn't happen that way. It's very messy. So my initial insights that I was finding didn't always pan out to be what my final claims and my final themes were that I learned from this research. And I had to go back many times and look at what I was choosing for evidence to support a particular claim, and I realized that maybe that evidence didn't really say what I thought it was saying. So it doesn't happen step by step. There's ebbs and flows. Sometimes it's going really well, and other times it's not going so well, and what you find isn't really what you're really supposed to be finding.
So I don't think data analysis can be done in isolation. You have to do some of it by yourself, but having conversations with others about it is key. The advice I have for other teachers when analyzing their data is remember to talk about it with others. Have others look at your data. You don't even have to have them look at your data sometimes. Just say, hey, this is what I did, this is what I see, and then maybe just have a couple things with you and go, what do you think about this? Do you see anything that I'm not seeing? But really just talk about it, because the more you talk about it, the more you make sense of it yourself. Sometimes analyzing data caused great frustration because I wanted to see something and sometimes it wasn't there. Or something popped up and you're like, wow, and you're surprised because you didn't think that would ever be there. It's interesting because you're reliving what happens in your classroom and you're making it make sense to you, and you're using it to help you be a better teacher and to help your students learn. So data analysis is just living through what you do every day and really putting a reflection focus on it.
In sum, that's exactly what data analysis is: living and reliving what you do as a teacher every day in a systematic and intentional way. And in that reliving, gaining new and deeper insights into your own teaching and your students' learning. It's not simple, it's not easy, but it is one of the most rewarding aspects of the inquiry process. And the very best way to learn how to do it is simply to begin. I hope that you were inspired to do so by the insights Mickey and Kristen offered into the process in this video. I wish you the very best on your data analysis journey, and happy inquiring.